So you have to configure, you have to create all your classes and you have to configure them into Spring XML file. And then you have to load Spring XML into application context. So whenever you start your application context, it will create objects. It will create objects by reading from Spring XML file. But lot of manual efforts you need to put, as a developer. You have to go to this XML and you have to configure all your beans, dependency injection, all that stuff, configurations, everything you need to do here. As XML is sensitive, if you miss any tag or if you misplace any configurations, it used to throw exceptions, right? So this manual configuration, the manual way of doing things is like a, preparing uh, uh, or manufacturing a particular item manually, like making a Rolls-Royce cars, they used to do manually. So each item may vary. They may not make same kind of car again and again. But if you see the huge production cars, like Maruti Suzuki or other manufacturers, right? They use robots to, manufacture the cars, robot units they will use. So automatically they will prepare the same kind of structure, same kind of thing every time, so that when we compare piece by piece, side by side, we will see almost same up to 99.99%. Okay, and there is no flaw and there is no downtime also. If robots starts working, they will work 24 by 7, not like a human, right? We can't put efforts more than 8 hours or 10 hours, whereas the automated robots can work 24 by 7 and they can give a lot of productivity. So if you think from that point, so doing manual configurations may, you know, invent issues, or it may raise some issues, or application development may take long time to do manual way of, creation of all the classes and configurations, right? It may take a lot of time to place configurations in place, okay, correctly. So to avoid all that, Spring thought, okay, let's use stereotype annotations and use component scanning concept, so that automatically we can create objects of all the classes which are there in our application. Okay, so if I use stereotype annotation across all my packages, right? So I need not to configure my classes into Spring XML file. In Spring framework, how we used to configure them is by using component scan. By using component scan, we can configure the package name, we can configure the base package name or root package name. And whenever we load this XML into application context will visit each and every package and it will read all the classes from those packages. And whichever classes are annotated with the stereotype, those classes objects automatically it will create. And if you want to use those objects, if you want to get that objects which are created automatically, you can use application context dot get bean of, you can give class name dot class so that you can get that particular object. So in general, we never bother about getting the objects also, right? Developer will not get these objects manually and deal with them. Okay. So, but in case if you want to test or if you want to read your bean, so this is where we can get the bean and we can call that particular bean methods. Okay. So, but in real time, in very rare scenarios, you will see this get bean method to get the object and deal with it. As we implement complete end-to-end MVC application, so the request come from view automatically will collect the bean and it will process it. So that's a different story we will discuss later. Okay. So, but this is how we can get the bean and we can process through. Now coming to Spring Boot, right? Instead of using this XML file and application context, we go with, right, to avoid all this, right? Instead of this in Spring Boot, instead of this, right, in Spring Boot, we do use this to avoid XML file and application context. What we will do, we'll create a class like this, main class, public class main, the main method class. We will put at the rate Spring Boot application. So this at the rate Spring Boot application will have internally component scan default parameter. Okay. So here we can give the base package component scan default component scan annotation will be activated when you use this, so that you can pass here package name. So the package name you can pass here, whichever root package you think it need to go and scan form.icici dot star. So it is sufficient to avoid that XML configuration. And to start application context, we use inside main method, we use Spring application dot run method, and we pass this class here, so that whichever annotation you have on top of this class, from this annotation, it will get this package path internally, this statement, right? Spring application dot run method internally having that application context. Internally, it is having application context logic. It will create application context object, and that application context will read this package and it will create all your objects. Okay. Same thing, same job it will do, but in a different way. Same job it will do in a different way. We'll discuss about it. We'll discuss about it next further sessions. Okay. How it is working in Spring Boot. Okay. Yesterday we thought, okay, we learned up to object creation. We learned up to object creation. We learned up to object creation by using XML based approach. In Spring Boot also the same thing, right? Let me give you one example in Spring Boot before going to discuss auto wiring and all. So I'm creating one simple project. So yesterday we created XML based stereotype project. We created simple Java project, added all the Spring libraries there, and created all the classes with the XML file. In that XML file, we used component scan and given base package name. And finally, we are loading that into application context so that it starts creating objects. You know how it will behave. Application context during loading time only, it will create all the objects. Whenever you load this XML, based on this XML package, it will scan all the packages and it will create objects to them. Now the same thing, we'll do it in Spring Boot. Let's create a Spring Boot starter project to understand stereotypes. Hey Dinesh, we will talk end of the session, okay? Yeah. So here you can give Spring Boot way of doing stereotypes. Those Maven, Java version, com dot, the root package name, customer banking, something. Next, I'm just going to use simple Spring starter only. I'm not going to include any other dependencies. So the project is created. Let's copy all these classes here. So the root package should be icici.cb. So I'm going to change it. Okay. So here we have all the classes, same classes configured here. Configuration class, DAO class, service, utility, and our controller. If you want REST controller, we can include web library also here, but let's keep it controller only for now. And Spring Boot application with the main method, Spring application.run. That's it. No XML file, no additional configuration here. And we are not configuring any package also here, nothing. Just when I start, Spring Boot application is started and it is creating all the objects. Your configuration object, DAO, service, validation, controller, and the bean which we created using @bean, all these objects created here. When we start this, by default, Spring Boot application contains component scan that will scan the classes from this root package. From this root package, so whatever classes or packages we have, right, it will pick up all the packages. From that packages, it will pick up all the classes and it will create objects to them. Internally, same story. It will start application context. Application context will create objects to all your beans. Okay, this is how Spring Boot will deal. Okay, we'll do other extension discussion for this Spring Boot based annotations and how they are internally functioning. Okay, now before going to you know, discuss all that, let's see how dependency injection will work and what is the need of dependency injection. Again, go back to MVC architecture. So for my requirement, okay, I wanted to implement some portal, employee registration portal. So I have employee registration form here, employee registration form to get the registrations from employee join date, date of join, something like this properties I have. When employee submits this form, backend side, I want to implement controllers, service, DAO, okay, and some configurations, connection pool or data source configuration, which is having connection pool logic. And here I have a bean, which is having connection pool data source object. And we will use this particular annotations, right? @controller, service, repository. For configurations, we use @configuration. All this stuff we will use. Okay. We learned how to create objects for these backend classes. For this requirement, I implemented controller, service, DAO configuration, and some more utility classes also implemented. Fine. How to integrate them? Backend side, you have created, classes and objects creation job you given to Spring. You are not creating objects. You are giving that job to Spring. So Spring is creating objects to you. So in Corejava, we used to use new keyword and we used to create objects. But here you are not doing that job. Spring is doing that job. So when you start application context, your IOC container is creating object. This is the one who is creating objects. So your controller object or service object, DAO, utility, all that objects are being created by IOC. So IOC know that where your objects are created, all that objects references, your objects addresses or references, it knows. You don't know. IOC know about them, where all these objects got created. It created so that it know the object locations, where they are. Now, I got a request from form to the controller. So controller, somehow it received the data, name, email, address, data it received here. So it got the data, name, email, address, and date of joining. And from here, it wants to forward this data to, from here, it is want to forward, controller want to forward this data to service. So that controller requires service object. I want to send this data to service methods. Sending into service means service class methods. So here one of my controller method received this data. I wanted to forward it to service layer, service class. How I can forward? I need the service object. But the service object is not with you. The service object or controller object itself or DO objects, all these objects are part of your IOC. Then you should ask IOC, give me that so-and-so object. You need to order for that object. You need to order for that object. Hey, IOC, you have service object that you already created. I know that I kept stereotype so that you created objects. You created objects as a given stereotype. I know you created objects. Whichever object you created, give it to me. I need that object. I wanted to call methods on that particular class. So how you can place order, how you can ask a container, give me so-and-so object. We use concept called auto wiring. We use concept called auto wire. So by using @auto wired, if you mention whichever class is required for you, right? Whichever class object is required for you. I need service class object. So just you need to create a reference. On top of reference, you need to put auto wired. You just need to put @auto wired. So what container will do? After service object creation, it will create your controller object, or it will create controller object before doing this dependency injection. It will create your service object and it will inject here automatically. Whichever object is already created, that object will be automatically injected here. Same way. Okay. From here now, controller can able to use this reference. If you see this is dummy reference, you don't have anything here. While you are creating this reference, you are not creating any object. But the object coming from your IOC via this auto wire. Auto wire will pass the object all the way from here. Let's say this is the service object. This auto wire annotation will pass that object reference here. Your service object will be passed here. So that object is available. So when you need to imagine in that way, okay, I created service class with stereotype annotation so that my container is going to create object to it. So if I need that object, I just need to put @auto void. That's it. Automatically that object will pass to your reference. Automatically it will happen. Same way, when you need DAO object, auto wired, and you can put DAO reference here. So once you got the data, once you receive data, once you receive data from controller, you can take it forward to your DAO. You can take it forward to your DAO. You can take it forward to the DAO here. So because DAO also auto wired, so the DAO object also available. Now if DAO want to connect to database and if it want to do CRUD operations, so I need a data source object which is created here using @bean. So this bean also available in your container, right? As we were discussing, all these are stereotype annotations which will create objects to you. Controller, service, repository, configuration, and at the rate bean also will help you to create objects. So whichever object being created using this at the rate bean, that one also you can use here to auto-wired data source object, data source. Okay, it is connection pool. We will see it. So data source object also I got here. So I have a method here, save, which received name, email address, and date of joining, all the data here. And from here, by using this data source, I can do some CRUD operations. I can do CRUD operations, and finally I can store the data into database. Finally, I can store data into database. So finally, my data, whichever I submitted from front end, the data sitting in database here. It traveled via controller, service, DAO, and finally it's stored into my database. And to travel from here to here, I need these objects. I need these classes. So as a developer, I am going to create a controller class. I'm going to create a service class, and I'm going to create a DAO class. And these classes need to connect with each other. For that purpose, I'm just doing auto wiring. DAO auto wiring into service, so that service can able to talk with DAO. Service is auto wiring into controller, so that controller can able to talk with service. So this is what we call dependency injection. Using auto-wire annotation, we are doing dependency injection. Okay. For this, do we need to do any special configuration? Means nothing. In XML-based approach, we used to do lot of manual, dependency injection stuff. But in Spring Boot, you need not to do anything. Like how you used stereotype annotation for your classes, for dependency injection, you can use auto-wired annotation. So automatically it will supply whatever you need. Let me try to explain this to make you understand simple, right? So yeah, Ankur, just a minute. Okay, let's say, if you imagine that so we were talking about the automated way of cars manufacturing, right? The automated way of cars manufacturing. See any video from YouTube, how cars manufactured automatically. Or let me show you. You may get some boring knowledge, but see. Car manufacturing. Robots manufacturing the cars, or car factory robots production fast. Just quickly we will. Not fair. Well, how about a trip to the moon? I'll just keep it in mute. If you see, these robots are fitting this, okay? So it got the complete, what we call this complete chassis and the body it got. So then robot is doing all this nuts and bolts fitting, and okay. So they developed as a independent components first, body, separate component, tires, all the remaining parts of the car were manufactured separately, and they are integrating here. Just a minute. Yeah, sunroof, everything they are fitting. They all made as a separate components first, right? Like our classes like controller, service, DAOs. Each component is developed separately and they are integrating here. Each part is integrating with car body. Okay, roof is installing. Okay, painting job. Painting also happening automatically. Almost many things, will happen automatically. See this engine fitting also. Almost engine also placing in the right position. Everything happening automatically, right? So why robots are being used there? They can give same kind of productivity. 24/7 they can work. As a human, we may do mistakes or we may do it in a different way. But robots are pre-coded. They will do how exactly they performed for previous car also. For every car, they will do the same job. So here, why I am showing that video. So these components separately we implemented controller service DAOs. Okay. And automatically this objects container is picking up. If you consider this is like a factory, manufacturing unit, IOC, it will pick up all these classes. Consider this is like body, seats, tires, etc. All it is picking up and it is creating objects to them. Now, itself, it is integrating them. It know where to place them. As a developer, we designed it. We designed it in such a way, okay? Controller needs a service object, service needs DO object. So it can easily understand, okay, this is what your requirement, I understood. I will pass those objects to you. So whichever objects it created, it will integrate easily with other component so that all will be ready. When you start your application, everything ready. It created objects, it injected them. All you need to do is you need to test or you need to utilize them. You need to utilize them in a proper way. You need to use the service object to make calls to service or DO objects to make calls to DO methods, or you need to use this data source maybe to collect connection objects and all. But earlier, this all we used to do manually. This dependency injection, right? Dependency injection, we used to handle this manually. Dependency injection, now we are using at the rate auto wiring. At the rate auto wire is helping us. But in XML based approach, we used to do manual dependency injection. I'll give one example, okay? I'll give one example there in the XML approach and I'll move back to auto wiring. Dependency injection with the auto wired at the rate auto wired. Okay. How we used to perform this manually in case of XML based approach? In case of XML based approach, what is the pain there? Okay. You know that all our beans we configure manually. Okay. Let's say here I have class car. And have class engine and class fuel. Okay. So I have three classes. I need fuel object in engine. Engine requires fuel to start. So I have to create that variable here. Private fuel F. And you need to have a setter method or constructor. So what I'm showing you here is manual way of dependency injection. Dependency injection, passing one object or one property into another class. using a manual way of dependency injection. You should have a setter method or a parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor you should have here, either setter method or parameterized constructor. Setter or parameterized constructor you should have here. To achieve that, to pass this fuel object here, you should have setter or constructor. Same way, I need this fuel engine object in my car. I want to pass engine to car. So in car also you should have this. And here I have something string fuel name. I want to pass fuel name also using dependency injection. So for this one, you should have again setter or constructor. So here I have three classes. For these three classes, first thing, why I should use this dependency injections are, as container is creating objects for you, you need to use dependency injection. Otherwise, how you utilize them? You can't. You need to utilize them by using dependency injection only. If it is, if you are preparing yourself, if you are cooking yourself, you can, serve. But if, or, if food is prepared in the hotel, you need to place an order, then only it will come to your home, or else you should go there and you should eat. So here, these objects all are created by IOC container. So whenever you need that so-and-so object, you need to inject manually. You need to inject them manually if there is no auto-wired approach. Okay. So the manual painful story I'm showing you here, manual dependency injection, how we used to do. Okay. First thing what we will do, we will create XML file. We'll create XML file. In that XML file, we use bean tag, bean class, fuel, and fuel class is having one dependency. What is the dependency name? Fuel class is having one dependency, string fuel name. Okay, I'll just erase it. Fuel name is the dependency. It's a simple string variable. Okay, I have the dependency. Can I pass this value from here? Yes. So here I have one dependency. This dependency value I can pass from here. You can use setter or constructor. If it is a setter, right, you are going to use property tag. Property name, your variable, fuel name, and you can pass the value. Value is equal to petrol. Using property tag, you can pass. Property tag is meant for setter method. Property tag meant for setter method. If you are using setters, you can use property tag. So this value will be passed into your fuel object. Once after fuel object is created, right? Container is going to create your fuel object. After fuel object creation, it will pass the fuel name. This petrol will pass here. Sir, I want to use constructor. Okay. If you want to go with constructor, you have to use constructor hyphen argument tag and value directly should pass. There is no need of giving name. Just you need to follow constructor arguments order and you should follow, pass that value. That's it. Constructor argument value, petrol. So you can go with any one of this option. At a time, you can't place constructor and property together here. So you can use constructor tag if it is a parameterized constructor. You can use property tag if it is a setter method. If you have a constructor. So by using setter or constructor, you can do dependency injection. Same way you need to do, as this is a simple value, string value, I used value type and given value here petrol or diesel or CNG. whatever it is. Now next to bean class engine. Bean class engine. Into this bean class, I have dependency of fuel object. So earlier I used to have simple string as a dependency. Now here engine is having fuel dependency. Here the reference variable is f. Here the reference variable is f. Into that f, I need to pass this fuel object. So to pass that fuel object, the fuel class reference variable you should pass here into this reference variable. I have this reference variable f. So I'm calling setter method to pass that value. And which reference you need to pass? This fuel reference you should pass here. So there is no reference, right? So for reference, you have to use one more ID, one more attribute called ID, something fuel. This ID you can pass as a reference. That fuel ID you can pass as a reference key. So whichever fuel object is created here, this object manually will be injected here. You need to do this manually. Same way engine object you need to inject into car. Bean class, car, bean, and here you need to have again property, property name, reference E, and engine class reference you should pass here. For this engine, we give ID something ENG. That ENG reference variable you should pass here. So that your engine object will be injected. The engine object here which you created will be injected here. This is what we call dependency injection. This is what we call dependency injection into our bean classes. So we can inject simple parameters, we can inject objects, anything we can inject. Anything can be injected into your class. Okay, but this is a manual way of doing. This much of tags we used to use to do this dependency injection during old framework usage, right? We used to do this literally all this job, but now in Spring Boot they completely avoided it, right? They completely avoided it. Using simple auto-aware annotation, we are achieving it. Using simple auto-aware annotation, we achieved it. Here we are just using auto-aware annotation, bus, nothing, no XML file. All objects are getting created. All objects automatically injected also. Okay. So all that pain which we used to struggle here to do manual, that is automated. So automatically all that components are integrated together. How it will understand means you are mentioning it, which object you required. Engine required fuel. So it have a clue. Okay, as fuel object I have, let me inject. Car requires engine as it, you mentioned the particular class which you required is. So it will create engine object and automatically injects gear. Okay. Something happening in the background. Okay. So are you guys clear?
Yes, nothing.
Actually, I thought of you make you understand dependency injection today. I think I was jumping here and there. if I confused you, okay, in the example, you will get clarity, okay. I'll show a clear example on manual dependency injection and this auto wiring. End-to-end use case we will implement, okay. I'll show you old Spring MVC application. Though we are not at MVC, I'll give end-to-end application because this is important concept. With the simple core example, main method example, it may not satisfy you. So in Spring Boot, I'll give one end-to-end flow, and in MVC also I'll give one end-to-end flow, and we can come back to other discussions. So just a minute, let me